If home builder confidence is so weak, why are global investors still pouring billions of dollars into U.S. housing? And where are they building? Well, follow the smart money, as I like to say. In the last few episodes, if you've been listening, we talked about how builder confidence is weak nationally and weak across every region of the country. And we looked at the National Association of Home Builders Index, and we noted how builder confidence is pretty low. Builder sentiment is very, very low. And it's everywhere. So the real question is, if sentiment is so low, why is money still flowing into U.S. housing? All right, I want to reference a New York Post article here, as well as an Instagram post that I came across. This is from @Real Estate. That's what they're called, @Real Estate. It's a good follow. And they also referenced a New York Post article. Now, according to the New York Post, Japanese home builders have completed more than 20 acquisitions of U.S. home builders since 2020. And they're on track to control roughly 6% of U.S. home construction. It's a pretty big share, if you ask me, especially coming from international investors. So what are the Japanese doing? They're essentially saying, look, we believe in the story of the United States. We think that, that it's the right time. It's the right time to invest in United States real estate. And specifically, they're purchasing home builders, U.S. home construction builders. So, while builder confidence here is weak, well, smart money from Japan seems to be moving in, and they're doing it even with mortgage rates elevated. They're thinking, why not? Now, let's talk a little bit about Japan. So Japan's population happens to be shrinking. The United States population continues to grow, and the U.S. is still short, roughly, as I've mentioned, 3 to 4 million homes. We still need 4 million homes, according to Freddie Mac, just to keep up pace, right? So the shortage is well understood, all right? And keep in mind that the Japanese, they're not focused on short-term weakness. They're focused on long-term opportunity, and they definitely see it here in the U.S. All right, so the question is this: if builders are struggling, if sentiment is so low, well, why would the Japanese do this? Because there is somewhere, a few places, in fact, in the United States, where it actually makes quite a bit of sense to still build. And I want to talk about that in today's show. The top 5 areas, 5 metros, let's call it, in which it is a good idea to build. And I'm going to start with Texas, all right? And why it's a good idea to build, I'm going to get into each one of these. But starting with Texas, specifically Austin, Dallas, Houston, okay? Take a look at this. Texas added roughly 470,000 people in just the last year, the most in the country, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Dallas-Fort Worth alone added 150,000 people in a single year. Texas leads the country in new home construction. So demand continues to absorb supply in Texas because of population and job growth. So Texas is a growing area. It's a growing state with growing metropolises. And hey, I mean, it's a good place if you're a home builder where demand is outweighing supply and you want to construct, right? All right, where else? Florida. Florida's a major one. Florida has led the nation in net migration. 300,000 people moving annually to Florida. It's still ranked the number 1 inbound state, multiple years in a row now. That's according to U-Haul. So U-Haul, the moving company, they track statistics of how many people are moving and where they're going to, and Florida came out to number 1. Inventory is still tight in Florida. Demand has slowed a little bit in Florida, but it hasn't gone away. But again, if you look specifically at Tampa, Orlando, and even still parts of South Florida, it's definitely, there's a shortage, a major one. You still have people coming in. Businesses are coming in as well. and employees that move and migrate to new towns, they need, housing, right? So there is still a shortage. All right, what else? Where else, I should say. All right, North Carolina, especially Raleigh and Charlotte. The Carolinas are key, and I'll throw in the Carolinas. I'll throw in South Carolina as well, but specifically, I'm looking at North Carolina. Raleigh is growing around 2 to 3% annually. Okay, population wise, and Charlotte, North Carolina, is one of the fastest growing large cities in the United States. So what's going on there? Well, you got major financial and tech companies moving in. You got big time tech expansion, data center build outs, and so forth. So that does create a very long-term stable housing demand because you're expanding, you're building out data centers, you're building out financial institutions, and you're moving people in. And so when corporations come in, people come in, and that is a great location to build housing because that is a long-term need that's going to continue to grow, I think, in Charlotte, especially in Raleigh as well. All right, where else? Tennessee, Nashville. Nashville, I think, is really standing out. I think it has been for the last few years, but now it's even becoming a little bit more noticeable. They're adding thousands and thousands of residents per year. There's been statistics out there that say Nashville is adding 80 to 100 people per day. And it's another one, again, driven by the same concept as what you're seeing in North Carolina. Corporate relocation, job growth. That steady growth continues to pressure supply. Why? Because, again, housing is needed because people are moving with these corporations. And it creates jobs. It creates job growth. And where you have jobs, people go to. All right, I'm going to add one more here that I felt should make this list. And it's Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix, I think, is an interesting one. Phoenix grew really, really, really fast. At one point, 80,000 residents were coming in annually when it reached its peak growth. It's not at that level anymore. But it's still a pretty big migration market. I mean, people are still, finding Phoenix attractive to move to. There are definitely more people moving in than moving out. And even after, I think, it cooled down a little bit, I think, Phoenix, but long-term demand is still strong there. So I want to keep it on the list. All right, what do these markets have in common? When you look at all of them, again, what did I talk about almost on every single one of them? Well, it was population growth. It was job growth. And that caused inbound migration. It's expansion. It's people coming in. It's businesses coming in. It's corporations building construction and again causing that, to create that housing demand, that need for housing. So you got these are basically markets where people are moving to, not away from. That's the key right there, and that's why, as a home builder, that's where you want to probably look to, right? Why else would you, build if no one's actually going there, right? You're looking for population growth. And so, I thought about that and I thought about, okay, if you invest in that, going back to the article of the Japanese, if you invest in that, you have to believe that you're investing in these home builders and they know what they're doing. They're building in the right places. And I mentioned that in the last episode. You have to know where you're building. You have to understand the local market that you're building in. You can't just build anywhere. So it's interesting because you got this low overall builder confidence, but it can't be low everywhere, right? In growth markets, demand is still supporting that development. Of course, in weaker markets, it gets much riskier. All right, remember the investor mindset that these Japanese have, right? And that these home builders should have. They're thinking 10 to 20 years ahead. They're not thinking next year. They're not even thinking 5 years from now, maybe not even 10. They're thinking, if I develop this now, what could it be worth? What value could it have 10, 20 years from now? If you're buying a buy and hold where you're thinking this is like a rental, say, building or something like that, what will these rent for 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Or what could they sell for 10 or 20 years from now? And I want to give you a real life example. If you developed in Miami 20 years ago, just 20 years ago, your investment likely tripled or even quadrupled. And that is, I'm not being conservative. That's exactly what you probably got in a return with a development that you did in Miami 20 years ago. So they're asking, what will this look like in 2040, not next year or in 5 years? Remember, they have a very long-term mindset. Okay, so let's connect this to the supply shortage. The U.S., as I mentioned, 4 million homes still in need. But where are they in need, right? And I mentioned some of the places they are. Of course, there's others. The real question is, it's showing up more in the areas and cities where population is growing the fastest, right? But the real question is, where is the shortage, right? And it's in those areas I mentioned. More people are moving in than homes are being built. That's what you're looking for, where more people are moving in than homes are being built. And demand is consistently outpacing supply. And that's what you see there: Texas, Florida, the Carolinas, Tennessee, and Arizona. I think that's where those high growth markets, that gap between supply and demand, I think it's very real. And I think that long-term demand is there in those markets. So I think as a home builder, again, like I mentioned, selective development, right? Focus on capital concentration. Focus on where it's needed. Look for an uneven housing market, not just building anywhere. The housing shortage, in some of these areas is going to be here to stay for a while. So you can begin a project in any of these areas, and I think you'll be fine. Build where there's demand, right? And note that, even if you're a buyer, not all these markets behave the same, that matters more than ever, right? Where you buy matters, where you build, where you develop matters. So remember, builder confidence, I mentioned it in the last few shows. It looks weak nationally, even regionally, but some of the smartest money in the world is still betting on U.S. housing, but just not everywhere. That is it for me today. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. And as always, if you have questions or need specific advice, ideas, or just some help regarding your particular real estate needs or situation, or if you're just looking to buy or sell real estate in Florida, well then DM me on Instagram at the Salib Group, or just send me an email to mark@thesalibgroup.com. Don't forget to leave a rating for the show, follow, subscribe, help others find the show, and be informed and educated about the real estate market just like you. Until next time.